All right. Welcome back, guys. Another edition of the Quick Bricks NBA DFS Podcast. This is episode number, so let's call it 19. I'm going to say November 28th. Got a nice little 10-game slate on tap for tonight. Didn't get the pod on Monday due to having a sick kid. Yesterday we only had a 5-game slate. But nonetheless, the SC Slack chat's been popping. We've been having guys posting lots of cashes. I've cashed for, I think, 3 nights in a row. So, hey, let's keep this train rolling. Let's go ahead. We got a lot to like tonight. I got a lot to talk about. I'm not going to lie. There's a ton of ways to go tonight. A lot of good matchups, a lot of good games tonight, 10 games. So, without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. We got the Knicks traveling to Philly to take on the Sixers. Philadelphia comes in here as a 12.5 point home favorite with a total of 227. Cantor at 6.8, I think, and now it's just you have to kind of play him. He's obviously getting starter minutes. Mitchell Robinson fouled out in like 17 minutes last night. Is just showing that he really can't be that starting center. Cantor obviously been picking it back up. It's been playing over 30 minutes again. So Cantor at 6.8, I think he's just way too cheap. I understand that he's going against Embiid. I understand that he's going against Philly. But with the way this slate's laid out so far, after me going through all the games, Cantor at 6.8 is probably one of the better value centers that I'm finding on this slate. I think you just can't really afford to pass up his price, especially on a game that has a 227 total, which is decently one of the higher totals on the board. With that being said, I will be looking at Cantor most definitely. I think he will be I think he'll be popular, but this slate is so big, and I think the ownership will be kind of decently spread out. There's obviously some other ways to go, and I think the pricing on the centers is slightly in favor of the player tonight, and not so much of just being, I don't know. The pricing is not bad except for like AD, obviously, but, we know that already. So Cantor, THJ at 6.6, but I got a feeling that he's probably going to get some Butler defense, and that's probably not ideal. Nonetheless, he's 6.6, which I think is very fair price for him. I think his value, has taken a little bit of a hit since Cantor's been starting. Still, he's put over 30 or more fantasy points in his last 4 or 5 on the road, so he's still effective, but he's not as productive as he has been in the past few games before Cantor was getting the start. He was basically taking up all the usage. But, like I said, if you feel like you need that spot, I don't mind it. I think I'm going to go back to Moutier tonight. I went with him last night when some people were on Burke. It looks like Burke has cooled off completely. Moutier has been kind of heating up, except for last night. He didn't exactly do much. But Philadelphia has given up some pretty decent games to the point guard spot here lately. It just kind of sucks that we don't really have a defined point guard here for the Knicks, but I think at Moutier at 4.7, I think it's fine. Philadelphia did just give up 38 and 30-something points to Dinwiddie and D'Angelo Russell from the Nets. So I think definitely Moutier is probably worth a look there. For Philadelphia, I'm playing one guy, I believe, and that's going to be Jimmy Butler at 7.8. I think he just deems the best matchup here. If you were in the SD Slack chat, I was not on Drummond last night for a reason that I saw in the data. And I hate to go off of defense versus position or DVP, whatever you want to call it. But it was pretty apparent that since the last 4 or 5 games that Cantor had started, the New York Knicks had actually been pretty much a lot better against the center spot than they had been before he was starting. They had ranked second most fantasy points over their last 10 games, and then over their last 5 games since Cantor has been starting, they had dropped all the way to like 7th or 8th. So I don't believe that I'm going to be paying up 11-2 for Embiid. I think I would rather pay for AD in that spot. I know Embiid has been a total monster at home. However, I don't think I'm going to pay for him tonight. I think I'd rather pay for AD in the spot that he's in against Washington in that pace-up game. That game's going to be nuts. I'm not going to pay the 8.8 or 8.9 that Simmons, or I think he might be over 9K. I don't think I'm going to be paying for Simmons. I don't think so. I think the only guy I think that's fairly priced in that game for Philadelphia is Butler at 7.8. So I'm going to leave it at that. That's kind of where I'm going. Cantor, THJ, and Moutier, and Butler. For Atlanta against Charlotte. Atlanta is on a back-to-back here. They've won 2 games in a row. I think there's some decent value in this game. Charlotte comes in here as a 12-point home favorite, 232 on the total. Pretty good, decent-sized total here. We know the Hawks like to run. We know Charlotte can run. Charlotte actually is I've said this before, but Charlotte is a much faster team than the pace rankings show them to be. Kimba at 9.3, totally a preference play there. I like it. I think it's definitely I think it's fair. Kimba has been a monster at home. I think I would probably rather pay that than pay for like Simmons or Embiid right now at this point, and if I was to have to choose. But I think at 9.3, he's definitely the highest price play in this game that I would touch, because I think there's enough value to build around him tonight. But Kimba at 9.3, I'm fine with. Marvin Williams at 4.5, just put up 20, 13, and 1, took 14 field goal attempts and was 4-9 from the 3-point line against the same team 2 games ago. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is back, 3.8, played 18 minutes last game, put up 23.3 fantasy points. MKG is a decent punt, I would say, if you're into that sort of thing. Even the little French girl, Tony Parker, at 3.6K, played 21 minutes last game, put up 27.3 versus Milwaukee. Yeah, I think TP could probably get a little extra run tonight. We know Atlanta on a back-to-back. We know Atlanta's not as good as their last 2 games have shown. I think they might have a little dead leg tonight. Who knows? But I think Tony Parker at 3.6 is definitely a fine play because I think he'll probably get 21 to 24 minutes, and I believe that he can. I believe he has 30-point upside. He's back from his 2-game absence where he had a rib injury. It looks like he's fine. Put up 27.3 fantasy points in his last game. So, Tony Parker, definitely worth a look. For Atlanta, John Collins, 6.1. Not very favorable of the price, but I think it's fair. He put up 23, 11, 4, and 1 in the last game against Atlanta here at Atlanta 2 games ago. So, he was by far their leading scorer. Kent Bazemore at 4.9 had a pretty decent game against them, 24, 5, and 1 line against Charlotte, their last game at home as well. So Bazemore at 4.9 I think is very fair. I think that's a very fair price for Bazemore. I think he's probably one of the better values on this slate as far as this game goes. We know this is going to be a little bit of up pace. I think this fits Baze pretty well. Once again, we already saw what he did. Like I said, that's a pretty decent line. So slightly under 5K, give me the Baze. And if you want to play Trae Young at 6.6, he's just so inconsistent, but he did just put up a 40-point game, I believe. He's put up 33.5 and 43.3, sorry. 33.5 and 43.3 in his last 2. He did put up an 18, 2, 5, 2 in 1 line against Charlotte here at home 2 games ago. But this is on the road, and this is Kimba's home. So, play what you want, play what you will there. That's kind of what I'm looking at. Going to move right along into the Utah at Brooklyn game. There's no line on this game. I guess they are waiting to see if Donovan Mitchell has already been pretty much noted that he's going to play. It's what it looks like. I think that's kind of what they're looking for, I guess. I think obviously we know Rudy Gobert is in a great spot here at 7.7. We know Brooklyn has not been very good against the center spot. Jared Allen is probably not going to be able to deal with Rudy tonight. Rudy at 7 points. Like I said, the center spot tonight is really favorable. I mean, there's just so many ways you can go. Rudy is definitely worth a look at 7.7. There for a while, he was putting up 40-plus fantasy points on the road for 4 or 5 games. I definitely could see him putting up 40 or more tonight. I do like Rudy. Donovan Mitchell at 7.3. If he comes back and has no minutes limit, I will definitely be bombing away with Donovan Mitchell at 7.3. I got no problems there. I think Joe Ingles, with his price going down to 5.9, is playable now. 32 or more in his last 2 road games. Obviously, that's exceeding the value at 5.9. We know that. You kind of want around over 30 fantasy points being under 6K. So, we know he has the upside, and obviously we know he has a good, a valuable matchup here with Brooklyn, obviously. Derek Favors at 4.8, I think, is worth maybe looking as a nice, decent value play. 24 minutes or more in his last 3 games. He's been putting up over 22 to 23 fantasy points. Had a 30-pointer or so. So, Derek Favors, I don't think, is a bad look. Even Jay Crowder, if you want to go that route. I think this game favors a little more. Anyway, that's kind of what I'm looking at for the Utah side. At Brooklyn, I don't think you can really fade DAR at 7.6K here. I mean, that's for the minutes that he's getting and the usage that he grabs for this team. DAR at 7.6 at home is just it's kind of too cheap. I think I'm gonna have to have a few shares. Dinwiddie at 6.2 has put up 30 plus fantasy points in his last 4 games. This has just been going off. And you guys, as you all know, I'm going to be punting Crab at 3.8. Any guy that's going to get 25 plus minutes in his last 5 games, putting up double digit field goal attempts on most nights, I just don't see where you can not punt him, and especially in GPPs at 3.8K. You just can't do it. So there's that. That is the Utah and Brooklyn breakdown for me. That's going to put us right on to that chalk game that I was just talking about here shortly, is Washington at the Pelicans. We know this game is going to be very high-paced. But this game has kind of a little bit of revenge to it because AD did not play in the game 2 or 3 games ago whenever they played at Washington, and Washington beat them by like 10. So I would not be surprised at all to see the Pelicans and AD, and that's why I said that I would probably pay up for AD tonight. I most definitely probably will be paying up for AD tonight. Yeah, I'm going to be paying up for AD. That's just all there is to it. I would say there's a good chance that they just totally beat the brakes off Washington tonight. They are a 6-point home favorite, 241 on the total. 241 points is the total on this game. We know it's going to be high-paced. Both of these teams are very high-paced. So, yeah, there's really no reason to fade this game. You're going to have to get some exposure to it. I know it's a 10-game slate, but this is just one that I don't think you can really you can't afford to fade this game. But I do think that I'll be looking at AD at 11.4, obviously. I think I'll be looking at Nico Mirotic at 6.9. And I think as a cheapie, I'll be looking at each one more at 5K. He did put up 39 fantasy points against them last game. Obviously, there was no AD. However, at 5K, I think that's a very fair price for each one more who still gets 28 to 30 minutes plus a game. And he has shown that he has that upside. So, don't hate each one more at 5K. Nico 6.9, AD 11.4 is kind of where I'm looking at the Pelicans. I mean, what about Drew Holiday? I don't know, man. He's just too high price for me. He's right in that mid to low 8K range. I think I'd rather play Bill. I just think Bill at 8K, 43 or more in his last 3 or 4 games here. I think I'd rather play Bill because I think Bill is going to be set up in a good spot tonight. I think Drew is going to get Wall, obviously. With Elfrid out, Drew has been running the point. I think that Drew is going to be guarding John Wall, and I think that Bill is going to be the open guy. I think that Bill is going to benefit from this the most. So I'm going to be looking at Brad Bill at 8K. I'm going to be looking at Otto Porter at 5.9, who's put up 31 or more in his last 4 games. I'm going to look at my boy Markieff again. At 5.1, his prices went up about $500 or $600, but I still think it's way too fair, especially in this game where they're going to probably need him to run that stretch 4, stretch 5, whatever you want to call it. 32, 33.3, and 42.5 in his last 3 games. You can't hate it. Jeff Green at 4K. I think they're going to need him again with no Dwight. He keeps seeing good minutes with him out at 4K. I think Jeff Green is a very fine play. So that's kind of what I'm looking at in the Washington Pelicans game. I think there's some nice plays in there. I think there's decent value, and obviously I think it's definitely stackable, and we know it will be chalky. So moving right along to Dallas at Houston. We have no line here because we don't know if CP3, Doncic, Gerald Green, a lot of questionables in this game. It's pretty crazy. Doncic did not practice yesterday due to sickness. I don't know if he will play tonight. There has actually been a few guys been missing because of illnesses, which is, it's kind of crazy, but we're getting into that type of season. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Doncic doesn't play. I wouldn't be surprised if he does play, to be flat out honest. If Doncic does not play, you have to look at JJ Barea at 5K, over 34 fantasy points in his last 2 games, or over 31 fantasy points in his last 2 games. Obviously, like I said, I think if Doncic obviously does not play again, I think Barnes at 6.3 is worth the look. I think that's a very fair price if Doncic doesn't play. Barnes has obviously been doing his Barnes thing. He's playing 30 minutes a game and putting up 30 fantasy points on most nights. So Barnes at 6.3, sure. Dorian Finney-Smith at 3.8 if you wanted a filler play. I know a lot of guys in the chat like him. I honestly have not played Finney-Smith one time this whole season. But at the same time, he's one of those, per minute guys that can fill your roster out. Like I said, that's one to watch and see Doncic's status because everything kind of revolves around him. I don't believe I'll be on DeAndre. I just don't think I want to bang around with Capella tonight. Capella's got his price way up tonight, and I don't know if that's because of his recent games, 45 last game. He had a monster game, like I think before that. I don't think against Detroit. I just don't believe I'll be paying up for Capella. I think there's just way too many nice price centers with Rudy, Cantor. I just don't think I can pay that. So, obviously, we will be looking to see if CP3 is going to be playing tonight. That'll be a big one. Obviously, we know if he does not, we will be playing Harden once again at 11-4. You can't fade Harden, especially without CP3. The guy's been seeing over 40% usage in his last 4 games, and it's only going up. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's at 42% right now. I haven't checked it, but I guarantee you it's probably 41.5 to 42% after their last game. We were all on Harden the other game. We all cashed. So that's definitely something to watch for. Eric Gordon at 5.8, if he doesn't play, is obviously another fantastic play. He's been putting up magnificent numbers the last 2 games without CP3. PJ Tucker at 4.4 if you want to go there. I think it is a good look. 42 minutes or more in his last 3 games. He's put up 32, 17, and 27 fantasy points in those 3. He's getting lots of minutes without those guys as well, so obviously that one would be one to look at. Would be a nice, plug and play there if they don't play again as well. But that's kind of what I'm looking at in Dallas and Houston. Obviously, like I said, a lot of tangibles on both sides right there that need to be looked at and watched, monitored throughout the day. I don't think Harden will go I don't think he'll go as overlooked as he did the other night. He was like sub 20%, which was just absolutely crazy. But anyway, I don't think he'll be that way tonight, especially if CP3 and those guys sit. He's going to be chalkier. So, with that said, that's kind of what I'm looking at in Dallas and Houston. Let's move right along to Chicago at Milwaukee, where Milwaukee is a 14-point home favorite. This game sits at 228 on the total. You got Jabari returning to Milwaukee. Revenge narrative at 6.6. Jabari's been playing very well lately. I definitely will probably be looking to play some Jabari. I definitely will probably be looking to play some Justin Holiday at 5.4. His price has raised 8 to 1,000, but he's put up 37, 44.8, and 56.3 in his last 3 games. The guy's just been going nuts. You might as well ride the streak while you can. It will end. So, I want to really, really like Wendell Carter Jr. at 5K, but something tells me that he's not producing. His numbers have not translated over to fantasy success. He has not been a very good fantasy player. So I don't hate it if you can find a way to make it work, I guess. But, I mean, there's obviously so many other better options on this slate. It's just so big. There's so many good options tonight. So that's kind of what I'm looking at in Chicago. I don't know if I'll be playing Levine. I don't know. Levine's price jumped up over the 8K mark, and I don't know if I'll be going there tonight. This game could easily end a blowout. Milwaukee did blow them out like 134 to 105 or something, 107 here. 5 or 6 games ago at Chicago. So this game could easily get out of hand. That's why I probably will not be paying up for Giannis. I don't think you can. He's 12K. He's the highest priced player on the slate. Obviously for that reason. But at the same time, you can't really be comfy knowing that you're paying $12K for Giannis and knowing that this could easily turn into a blowout. Now, don't get me wrong. He put up 71 fantasy points in 3 quarters against the Spurs and didn't play pretty much the whole 4th. Can he do it? Sure. But that was the only time that he's done that here in a good while. So, obviously the matchup's there, but I don't believe I'll be playing Giannis. Bledsoe at 6'9", I think is fine. Brogdon at 5.6, I think is better than fine. I think he's probably one of the better values. 32 or more in his last 3. He's put up 32 or more fantasy points in his last 3 games. Brogdon has low-key been playing very well. We know that Chicago gives it up to the shooting guard spot. I think they'll be more worried about Bledsoe. So I think Brogdon can sneak in here at 5.6 and be very, very effective. If you want to go cheap, Pat Connaughton at 3.7, I think it's worth a punt. Obviously, we know if it goes to a blowout, he should get some extra run. I think at 3.7 is a very fair price. Brooke Lopez at 4.8. Once again, I think is a cheap center that you can look at tonight against Chicago. Chicago has not been as great against the center spot, so we know that Chicago is giving up 3-pointers, and that's what he likes to shoot. So at 4.8, I don't hate Brolo. So if you want to get him in there, I don't hate it. That's kind of what I'm looking at in Chicago and Milwaukee. Let's roll right over to San Antonio at Minnesota. I don't like a lot. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't really like this game. 4.5-point home favorite from Minnesota. San Antonio and 216 on the total. -4.5 for the T-Wolves at home. I think there's 3 plays that I'm looking at. It's going to be LMA at 8.3. It's going to be Karl Anthony Towns at 9.4. And it's going to be Derrick Rose at 6.4. I'm not just a whole huge fan of Derrick Rose here. I'm totally fine with fading this game. I just don't see it being all that great. But those are my favorite plays, kind of. I think Towns is definitely worth playing at 9.4. I think LMA is definitely worth playing at 8.3. And then I could go either way on Rose. That's kind of what I'm looking at in San Antonio, Minnesota. Rolling on to Cleveland at OKC. OKC -13, 215 on the total here. This game presents some nice stackability, I think, more so with the OKC side. I think Russ at 10.9, I think, is once again just too cheap. PG-13 is your guy tonight at 8.9. He's probably one of the cheaper stud players on this slate. We know Robert Covington just put up 44 fantasy points against this same Cavs team. So I would definitely be looking at PG-13 here. I just don't think you can afford to fade him. Russ at 10.9, especially if you're going to pair him. Other than that, I think maybe Schroeder at 6K is fine. For the Cleveland side, I think Sexton at 5.7 is a very nice value play. I know point guards have been as great against OKC, but the guy's still putting up, double-digit field goal attempts every game. He put up 19 last game. I can't say you can totally fade him here. He's been playing well. He's kind of cooled off last game. Didn't have a very good game. Clarkson didn't have a very good game. But both of those guys are still seeing tons of usage for this team. But it did kind of shake up things with Nance starting. So Hood took more shots. I think Hood at 4.6 is a very fair play tonight. We know that OKC does not have a 2 guard right now with Terrence Ferguson out, with Roberson still out. I don't know if they play Abrams. I don't know what they do. It'd be kind of interesting to see who they start tonight. But Hood at 4.6, I'm fine with. Nance at 5.3, I'm fine with, especially if he gets another start at 5.3. Nance put up nearly a triple-double last game, so Nance at 5.3, sure. If all those guys are set to sit out again, there's a bunch of questionable guys on the Cavs. Be worth watching. George Hill's questionable. Sam Decker's questionable. Nwaba's questionable. Looks like everybody on their team that was out is questionable for tonight, so it will be worth watching again tonight, especially because if they do sit, I think Kyle Korver at 3.5 is another look. 22 and 19 minutes in his last 2 games, 21 and 30.5 fantasy points, 3.5K. It's worth the punt. So that's kind of what I'm looking at in Cleveland and OKC. Going to roll right on to Orlando at Portland, where we do not have a line. It's probably because of Aaron Gordon. He tweaked something in his last game, didn't play the whole last part of the game. Obviously, if there's no Orton, Jesus. If there's no Aaron Gordon, you're going to be playing Vucevic at 8.3. Say it with me. If there is no Aaron Gordon, you are going to be playing Vucevic at 8.3. I do not believe that you can fade Vucevic at this price, even with Aaron Gordon. I mean, that's just criminal right now. The guy's been just absolutely demolishing folks lately. 58 and 72 in his last 2, all of them on the West Coast against Golden State and the Lakers. I'm sorry, but I don't think that Portland puts up a very much greater matchup here for him. So as far as defensive-wise goes, so Vucevic at 8.3, sure, give it to me. One of the better value plays and has a lot of narrative. You got Terrence Ross going home. He is from Portland. If you remember, whenever Portland came to town to Orlando, he put up like a 40 fantasy point game. So Portland is where he's from. So get Terrence Ross in there at 4.4. Evan Fournier has not been good on the road. I think Ross can steal minutes. So I will definitely be playing some Terrence Ross. He's put up 30 and 38 in his last two games. So like I said, you get the narrative, and he's been on a little bit of a hot streak. So get on some Terrence Ross. If Aaron Gordon doesn't play, Jonathan Isaac at 3 points. Jonathan Isaac at 3.7 becomes very, very interesting. I think that's just too cheap. If you want to go if you want to punt Augustine at 4.3, over 30 fantasy points in his last two on the West Coast here. He's been playing well. And I haven't been on him, but a couple of guys in the Slack chat have. Props to those guys. But Augustine at 4.3, absolutely. Over 30 fantasy points in his last two. Jonathan Isaac, like I said, especially if Aaron Gordon does not play, we're going to be playing Voos at 8.3. We're going to be playing Voos anyway. Terrence Ross at 4.4, get him in, hometown. Evan Turner, McCollum, and Aminu is what I'm looking at for Portland. Everybody's like, why are you not playing Dame? Dame at 9.4 or 6 or whatever he is at has not cleared value in multiple games. I'd rather play Kimba at 9.3 if I'm gonna play a point guard at that kind of spot, or Russ. I just don't think, or Harden. That's kind of what I'm saying. I don't think that Dame is the play. I think McCollum is actually the play in this game at 7.2. I like him a lot better. I think that it looks like Clay put up a really nice game against them. Brandon Ingram played the 2 guard for the Lakers and put up a really nice game against Orlando as well. So I'm going to look at McCollum. I think Aminu is way too cheap at 4.6, especially if no Aaron Gordon. I think he becomes very, very interesting there. Maybe that probably isn't the greatest thing if Jonathan Isaac gets to start at the 4, or I don't know. I'll just have to wait and see. But Evan Turner at 4.4 I think is a nice play as well. They need him off the bench, and I think he has a nice matchup. So that's kind of what I'm looking at with Orlando and Portland. For Phoenix and the Clippers, I like this game a lot. I think your main guys are going to be very highly stackable. 228 on the total. Clippers come in as -12. For the Clippers, obviously Tobias Harris at 8.4 is one of my favorite plays. I think Harrell at 7.2, although he's very, very pricey. This matchup favors him very, very, very well. So Harrell at 7.2, I don't hate. Lou Williams at 5.7, I think he's just way too cheap. He hasn't been seeing the minutes. He's been seeing the minutes, but with Avery Bradley back in full swing, it's kind of taken a little bit of a toll on his fantasy production. But at 5.7, I think you just can't afford to pass that up. For Phoenix, Booker at 8.8. LA Clips have been getting demolished by point guards. Booker moved to the point last night. He should be playing point again tonight. I think they'll stick with that lineup. So I would definitely be looking at Booker at 8.8. I would definitely be looking at DeAndre Ayton at 7.3. The Clippers, obviously, as we know, has not been very good against the center spot with Gortat starting. He's just not very good. So Ayton at 7.3. You got another revenge narrative here with Jamal Crawford going back to L.A. We know that he played for the Clippers for a long time. So I was on him yesterday. He put up 22 fantasy points. I don't hate it. He was 3.3K. He is 3.4K tonight, has seen 21 or more minutes in his last 4, and has put up over 22 fantasy points in 3 of those 4. So if you want to punt, I think he's definitely worth the punt. We know he's going back home. You get a little revenge narrative here. So you can look at that. I think also Josh Jackson's been getting a little more run at 3.3K, 24 minutes, 22 minutes in his last 2 games. He hasn't exactly translated into much fantasy production, but it's worth a look. It's going to be a decently paced game here with the Clippers. Josh Jackson at 3.3 is definitely worth a look. I would definitely look there, guys. So that's going to round out this edition of the Quick Bricks NBA DFS podcast. I guess I can quickly kind of run through just kind of a brief overview of what I covered, what I have as my favorites, my values and punts, and I'm not gonna lie, guys, it's a lot. This is a huge slate. It's a nice one. So favorites: Butler, Kimba, Brad Beal, AD, Nico, Harden, PG-13, Booker, Vucevic, LMA, Tobias Harris. For your more value plays in the kind of the 7 below range: Cantor, Collins, Donovan Mitchell, D'Angelo Russell, Eric Gordon, Jabari Parker, Bledsoe, Sexton, McCollum, Lou Williams, Ayton, Aminu, and I also got Malcolm Brogdon. For my punts, I'm going to be looking at Moutier, Bazemore, Tony Parker, Alan Crabb, E'Twaun Moore, P.J. Tucker, Brooke Lopez, Rodney Hood, Terrence Ross, Evan Turner, Jamal Crawford, Josh Jackson, DJ Augustine, and Pat Connaughton. So it's been 30 minutes. This has by far been my longest pod. I hope you guys got a lot of info out of it. I threw out a lot of stuff. If you're not in the SC Slack chat, I would definitely advise getting in there. We've been throwing down with a lot of good stuff going around in there. A lot of good guys, great-minded guys in there. Been really enjoying it. We've been cashing, so if you want to cash, get in, join us. Let's talk. See you guys later.